Hi everyone, welcome to another behind the studio door film, and today we are in the studio of the amazing Elliot Board, a multimedia artist. I'm doing this intro, recording it at the end of having recorded our videos with Ali and doing the studio tour later on, and believe me, you're going to come away from this one so inspired, so enthused, and so want to break all the rules. So I really hope you enjoy it, and of course we'll follow it up with a studio tour afterwards and then a gallery of some of Ali's work. And anything that you need to know I'm going to put into the comments of the video, all the links to Ali's social media, website, and everything else that I can find. So hope you enjoy it, and thank you very much for watching.
Hi everybody, my name's Ali, Alison Board, and I'm sat here in my studio with the lovely Lisa sitting behind the camera, and we're going to have a chat about me, which is slightly embarrassing, but we will chat about me and where I started and how I got to where I am now and where I see myself going in the future, which is a very scary prospect but exciting all at the same time. So my career start was a bit unusual. I did not decide to be an artist. I did not magically sitting home alone colouring something in decide this is what I wanted to do. I had absolutely no intention whatsoever of being an artist because it wasn't even on my radar. I actually started out in the theatre. So between the ages of 4 and 18 I did ballet and various other kinds of dance and drama and singing and productions and all kinds of things, and it was absolutely my life and I loved every single minute of it. And then when I got to the age of 17, 18, I realised that I wasn't really built to be a ballet dancer. I was far too tall and my hips were far too wide, and so I then switched to training to be a ballet teacher. And I qualified and luckily was able to do all of my training at home near to where I lived, so I didn't have to go to London or do any of those kind of things. Did my teaching certificates and then decided to have my own ballet school. Now the ballet school that I trained at was the most amazing place. It's and still is the most amazing place. It has a family feel, everybody's very supportive of each other. And when I went to have my own ballet school, it was still lovely, but people were very competitive and I wasn't used to it. And I found that parents in particular were so competitive, I would spend my life on the telephone trying to explain why one child had done better than the other child, and it really took the fun out of it. So I gave up my own school after 3 or 4 years. And in the interim, because of course that had been my trajectory for, well, the entirety of my life, my parents, my father owned a stationery shop, and my mum owned an art materials and picture framing shop. So they said, well, come and work for us while you decide what it is you want to do. There's a job there for you if you want. And I just spent my life working with them, and for about 15, 20 years I worked for them. Taught myself how to paint because we were surrounded by just the most delicious materials. We learned how to use everything. We taught ourselves so that we could advise people on how to do that. We learned how to picture frame. We got trained in how to picture frame. We got training for curation. And then at the end of that, my parents decided to semi-retire and retail was kind of dying out. And so I took the business on and moved it to another location, and then with the onus being on me rather than on them, we had a gallery, we had a teaching room, so I sort of switched my subject. All the training that I'd done to become a teacher, I was then helping people with painting. I couldn't paint, I genuinely couldn't paint, but I knew how to use materials. So I had a little room in the back of our business where we would sit down and we'd kind of experiment together. And then my parents decided to retire, and I had a massive change of personal circumstances as well. I'd broken up with somebody, and so I thought, I'm going to do all the things that I had promised myself to do. So at the age of, I think I was 34, I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do my fine art degree. So I went to Bournemouth University, to Arts University Bournemouth, and did a foundation year and did my fine art degree, which was a contemporary fine art degree, and I specialised in printmaking and installation and sculpture, nothing like what I do now. And I loved it, loved every minute of it. But what it did do was teach me two things. It taught me what I don't like about art rather than what I do like about art. And it taught me how to write about art, which was a skill I didn't have before. And when I came out of my degree, during that time as well, I met my now husband. And he said to me, okay, so what is it you're going to do? Because I kind of came out of my degree not really with a particular career or a particular pathway. And I said, well, it'd be nice to teach more classes, and it would be nice to have a little space where I could paint. And so he built me a studio, because he has always been so amazingly supportive of everything that I do. So we converted our garage and we built onto it, and we created a space where I could paint and I could teach, and we now use it as a base, and we've developed the garden and all sorts of other things on top of that. So we're hoping that it's a space that people want to be in, to create. It's a space that I love with every fibre of my being. And it's just kind of escalated from there, really. What's interesting now is that because I sit in front of a camera, and because I demonstrate and do things on television and do tutorials and DVDs and all of those kind of things, my career in the theatre has paid off 1,000-fold, because I now have the confidence and I now know what it takes to stand up in front of people and communicate the things that I want to communicate, which is why I'm holding on to my hands here, because otherwise I'd be being terribly demonstrative and actually not really reining it in. But all of those years that I spent standing on a stage, I thank, because it has actually been the building blocks for my career. So I talk at length about magic art stick, and I try to convince people that there is no magic art stick. I didn't sit with pens and pencils as a very young child dreaming of being an artist. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was kind of creative, and I made things out of cardboard boxes like all kids do, and I'm just grateful that I'd never really lost that. I managed to hold on to that lovely kind of childlike enthusiasm about what a new pencil feels like, and you know, I still like a new pencil case at the start of every term, which is something that my dad kind of instilled in me, and I love the smell of paper and books and all those things. And I think that love of materials and that kind of childlike enthusiasm and my theatre training have actually all gone into me becoming an artist. The skill is just hard work. It's just me sitting there kind of beating myself up because I can't create something, and then getting a little bit belligerent about it and saying, well, I will learn how to do this, and so I will go and find a way of being able to create it. But what's lovely now in my career is, yes, I'm an artist, yes, I get to do some phenomenal things, but I still get to teach ballet as well. So I kept my hand in, and I still have my teaching certificate. And so the school that I originally trained at is now owned by one of my oldest friends, and she very kindly invites me back to teach various classes. And now I have an adult ballet class that I teach every single week. In fact, I have 2 adult classes which I teach every single week. And so all the things that I have learned about teaching and creating and ballet and standing on stage, I call it my hobby job, really. I get to teach art during the day and I get to teach ballet at night, and I am so grateful for all those opportunities that I've ever had, all of which have fallen into my lap accidentally, but I've just kind of grabbed them and run. And I think that is probably the biggest piece of advice I would give to anybody who's thinking of making this a career, is try not to think too hard about it. If an opportunity falls in your lap, grab it and run, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. That's not a problem. I mean, I went to university when I was 34, pretty much because it would have been lost on me at 18. And we are lucky that we live in a society where you can do that, where you can decide to retrain. But if it's your passion, you will achieve it. And there will be dark days. Lisa and I were chatting before this recording about days where you lose all confidence in yourself, but you have to have the drive, you have to have the passion to do it. And honestly, anything is achievable, and I'm pretty much a testament to that. Plus, you have to have a support network around you. Artists do not work on their own, despite what you might think. And that might be other artists that are out there. That might be your family or your friends or your partner or whoever it is. You need everybody backing you 100%, because there will be days when you think, actually, this isn't working and I can't make this work, and you know what, I'll just go and get a job because that would be the sensible thing to do. But you need somebody behind you going, don't be ridiculous, you can do this, you've got this. And then you kind of give yourself a kick up the backside and you carry on doing the thing that you are the most passionate about. And hopefully that comes across in what I do and how I teach and my work as well, that I'm so driven by being creative and encouraging other people to do the same, really. So that's my story.
That's fantastic. So that's your story. So
Yes.
A little bit more about sort of your work. Obviously, most of us know you a lot through the SAA. That's how my awareness, obviously, because of my links with the SAA now, and the fact that you're a mixed media artist. And obviously we're going to do a gallery of your work. You've got some of your bits in here, and we'll pop up some of your work at the end of the video as well.
Thank you.
So sort of, if you want to talk about, you know, your materials, because obviously my followers are mostly pencil people, pastel people, but this is going out, you know, we're doing videos. This Behind the Studio Door series is going to incorporate glass artists, ceramics, you know, all different types. So if you want to talk about your art.
Okay, so my painting has evolved, I think, because of where I started, by understanding the materials first. When I was working for Mum and Dad, I couldn't have painted you a watercolour landscape, I couldn't have constructed an animal portrait or any of those things. But I did know what the materials did. I did know what this brush was supposed to be able to do. I did know what these paints would do. I knew all the technicalities of it. I'd been on so many training days with people like Winsor & Newton and Dale Rowney and all kinds of things, so that I could sell materials. Because when Mum and I first had the shop, I would love a video recording of that. Of when people used to come in and used to say, what varnish do I use on my oil painting? It's been dry 2 weeks. And we'd go, I don't know, but leave it with us and we'll find out. So all of that information is I've absorbed over 20 odd years, and the materials excite me to the extent where in my own work, I don't believe that there's just one material. I love watercolours and I love everything to do with watercolours. I think watercolours are the most exciting medium, but it frustrates me because there's certain things it won't do. And I can either battle through that in trying to make it do that, or I can just find something else that does the job better and put those two things together. And again, I didn't really decide to be a mixed media artist. It's just the way that it's evolved. So if I think that I'm doing an animal portrait and the background would look really good in a sort of wishy-washy watercolour, but I don't want to sit there for hours painting in every last bit of fur because I know a pastel pencil will do that job better, then I'll use a pastel pencil. And so a lot of my work is driven by the materials, and because I still get ridiculously excited when a new tube of paint comes out and I have to buy it and I have to purchase it and I have to slosh it about on a piece of paper. And then that way, when I sit down to paint, the subject matter is kind of irrelevant. It's about me throwing materials at a piece of paper and going, oh, do you know what that looks like? It looks like this. And therefore, my work is very experimental and it changes really quickly and it evolves really fast. And a pencil that I loved last week is not a pencil I love this week. There are kind of bits and pieces that remain, like my love of watercolours will never change, my love of a decent piece of watercolour paper will never ever change, but someone will bring out a new pen and it's perfect because it makes this mark, or it looks like a rusty old door or a bit of barbed wire. But also, because of my upbringing, I suppose, and being encouraged to be creative, I'm not averse to using a bit of rusty old metal to make a mark. And so I think that sort of cherry picking, pick and mix, if you like, of understanding materials, about going to university and doing things so wholly different from painting in printmaking. I mean, printmaking features a lot in my work, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. If I want to paint a leaf and I want it to be the perfect shape of a leaf, I can either sit there for hours diligently painting it, or I can put some paint on it and I can take a print off it and then I know it's the right shape. I'm not averse to tracing or using photographs or using a computer or any of those kind of things that unfortunately now are sort of deemed as cheating, and I take real umbrage with that, because I think it's not cheating, it's just finding a different way of using it. And so my work tends to revolve around those things that I've just discovered. Like, I've just discovered that my husband made me a giant flower press, and I went all the way around the garden collecting every kind of leaf flower and all the rest of it. And then they've ended up as being collaged into paintings, or I've taken prints off them. I've started doing a bit of silversmithing and taking moulds off of natural forms, and then I've discovered you can push paint into those moulds. And so I can't say that my work is one particular thing, because last week it was this and next week it will be something else. And whilst that may make me seem a little bit moth-like, I think the experimental nature makes it interesting. I'm never bored. I never ever sit down going, do you know what, I did this last week, because it will be different from how I did it last time. I don't ever teach the same thing twice. I might teach the same subject material, but one workshop will do it this way and then the next workshop will do it another way. I've just discovered Lego. You can use Lego in your work. Who knew that was a thing? And so it becomes something that I might sit down to do a portrait of a chicken, but I'm so excited by this colour pink that we'll have a pink chicken. And to me, that doesn't matter. And I think that giving people permission to try out all those things is the creative part of it. You don't have to do it a certain way. And one of the things I tell my students to do all the time, I'm telling you how to do this, go prove it some other way. Go ignore the advice that I give you, ignore the advice that anybody gives you, go make your own decisions about stuff. Use this. If somebody tells you that watercolour won't work on this surface, go and do it anyway. And they might be right, but they also might be wrong. And it might be the thing that unlocks a new creative avenue for you to kind of go down. And I think that's the most exciting part about art, really, is about knowing all the rules and going and breaking them.
I think that's it. I've been sat behind this camera listening to Alison, and I have just got the biggest grin on my face going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And it's sort of, I know as colour pencil artists, we are so tight and almost uptight, and that's been dictated to us by what we see on social media nowadays because of realism and all this sort of thing. I have my most fun days when I get my inks out and I just go, right, I'm going to do a lion today, but let's just limit my palette, let's just throw it on there, let's try a different paper, let's work fast, let's do all the opposites to what are my usual rules, and I have fun and I release my creative, and it's just finding that balance. We're also opposite poles. Yeah. I know what I'm creating, but I'm striving and chasing that. I want my materials to dictate to me and me to see that loose, something coming out of it and emerging, and me going, oh my god, I can see it. Like when I look at the clouds and I see the cows and the things, and the shapes in the sky. I want to see that in my materials one day, and that's what I strive for, and it is the opposite end of my spectrum. But I'm just so exciting to listen to you.
I think as well that I try to say to people who are learning to paint or have a creative desire, there's two opposite ends of the spectrum. You buy your materials, or you acquire your materials, you gather your materials, or however they manifest themselves, and then the opposite thing to that is what you've created, and people get fixated on those two things. They buy all the stuff, which is great. I am the worst person to say you should never buy art materials, but at least you can see I'm surrounded by them. But the thing that we do is we put this painting on a pedestal, and I talk about this a lot as well, that we go, right, I've got this lovely piece of paper and these paints and all the rest of it, and I'm going to frame it in this kind of mount, in this kind of frame, it's going to hang in this exhibition, and you go back right up. Because your joy should happen in between those two things. It should be in how you create and what you create and what happens to you during that time. And yes, it might end up in the bin. Never mind. Moving on, that's just the next painting. We get so hung up on the finished thing. It's such an adult thing to do. And the more I teach kids, and I've taught many kids ballet, art and all the rest of it over the years, a kid will take a great big piece of paper and draw in the middle of it. And they don't care. And if it doesn't work, it goes out the window and the next one is created. And as adults, we need to re-harness that. I would love to find the moment where we're told that that's a bad thing. And I'd like to beat those people that tell you it's a bad thing, because it isn't. Do you know what? It's your bit of paper, your pencils, your creation. You can do whatever you like with it. And the joy should happen in the process and not the start and not the end, the bit in the middle. Because bizarrely, if you have joy in the bit in the middle, you'll actually be more successful. Your output will be so much more successful because that joy will manifest itself and people will be able to see that in your work. They really will. I know that sounds peculiar, but you hang a load of paintings in a room and you can go around and you can tell which paintings have been done with love and creativity and joy, and they're probably not the most accomplished paintings in the room, but they will always be the ones that I will gravitate towards because I will see something of that person in that painting, and it's like a signature. And that is the thing I think I strive for in my work, that my work might look like an animal portrait or a landscape, but hopefully there's something else, there's a second reading in there that is some sort of narrative which shows my reaction to something, or the thing that I thought was important, or the fact that I was having a purple day and everything in it is purple.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things that become astonishingly important, not the end result. And I would be a massive hypocrite if I said that I don't worry about the end result. Of course I worry about the end result, because somebody's seeing it through a camera or somebody's reading about it. But there is no point me producing this perfect painting if the rest of it is so clinical and so sterile that it doesn't provoke the reaction of joy in somebody, which sounds very hippie-ish, doesn't it? But
it's not at all, because it's something I try to put across, that when people do my tutorials, I'm teaching them techniques. I'm teaching them techniques using my colour palette, my choices, my methods. I want people to, if they want to learn it religiously, absolutely fine. If that's how they need to start off, anything to get them creating.
But that's all it is. It's a starting point.
Yeah, but it's the whole. They don't need to worry about that finished piece looking like, oh, but mine doesn't look as good as someone else's I saw online, or someone else drew from the same reference photo. It doesn't look as real. It doesn't matter.
No.
I love the blue dog. I love the blue dog, not the black dog. I love the blue. I would buy the blue dog that looks like someone had joy, and it's them, their vision, and their colours that have come through. I don't want the perfect copy of the photo. That is.
Yeah.
But there's no rules.
No.
Doesn't mean that the perfect black copy of the dog is wrong.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
All creative.
Yeah.
Just create.
And I say when we're teaching in class, don't turn into a meerkat, because adults do this as a rule, and you'll see it in all sorts of things, right from the most ridiculous situation to the most complicated. So you put something down and you're instantly like this, what's everyone else done? What's everyone else done? So there's this constant comparison. Who cares what anyone else has done? They're doing their own thing. You do your thing. Fight your own battles. Be competitive with yourself. Go, well, do you know what? I can do better than that. I can do better than that. And then you just move on to the next one. But you cannot possibly compare yourself to the person sitting next to you. If I gave everybody a passage of text to copy out, everyone would put it in a different place on the piece of paper. Some people's handwriting would be big, some people's handwriting would be small. But for some reason, that's acceptable.
Alison would use a purple pen.
I would use a purple pen. I would use a purple piece of paper.
And I'd use a pink one. There you go.
But for some reason, that's acceptable. But in creating art, people struggle with the fact, why doesn't mine look like? Well, it's never going to, because it's going to look like what you've done. And yes, come to a tutorial, follow it absolutely step by step, and be proud of the fact that you've achieved what it was you set out to achieve. But then please go home, take everything that I've told you and chuck it all out the window and find your own route through, because that's the point. That's the whole point of it. That's why everybody's paintings are different, and that's why all artists can exist side by side. There's no competitiveness. There shouldn't be any competitiveness, I should say, because you're doing your own thing. And if people can't be joyful for you in doing your own thing, move along.
Jog on.
From those people.
Oh, that's just fantastic to hear that as well. This is all sort of therapy, and I know the guys that are going to be watching this at home are going to be going, oh my god, that's amazing, that's what we all want to hear, and we all think it, but then just to hear someone else say it as a reminder.
Yeah, it's permission, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And then I'd be a massive hypocrite if I didn't say that I too am that meerkat going, oh, so-and-so's doing this, so that's what I must do.
But it is good at do look at everybody else, because I encourage people on my workshops, look at the people next door, look at everybody else's, and then you'll see you're all using the same palette, the same image, but they're all different.
All different.
And they're all becoming yours, your creations.
And yes, you can look at somebody else's and think, oh, that's a fantastic way of interpreting it, but that's what you do next time.
Yeah.
That's not...
Take a little bit of that, a little bit of this.
Don't compare what they've done now to what you've done now. You're like a sponge.
Yeah.
You just take all these things on board, and then you filter out the stuff that doesn't matter to you. And it doesn't matter if someone's telling you that something is really important. If it's not important to you, it's not important.
It
doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because, I mean, it depends on what level you're trying to make art exist. And even as a career path, if it doesn't bring you joy, what's the point? What's the point of being creative? Let's use theatre as an analogy. If you go to see a ballet, because that's what I can talk about with some sort of authority. If you go to see a ballet and the performer is not invested in what they're doing, okay, it might be a drama, so they're not looking joyful, but if they're not investing in it, you can tell. You can tell if it's a good performance or a bad performance because of the amount that someone's invested in it. And that becoming part of what you do is so important, both as an outlet, both as therapy, both as a career. It doesn't matter on what level you're accessing this thing. You need to be invested in it, because otherwise you won't get back from it. What's the point of painting a picture if you're hating every moment of it? No point at all. Just no point at all, is there? Because even if it's for your career, you hope that when your paintings are seen in a gallery or on a tutorial or online or however they manifest themselves, that is a bit of you. And I know that's the scary bit. I know nobody likes to set themselves up by going, look, here's me, because you're laying yourself bare. But I promise you that the people who matter will react to that. And they'll react to it in a positive way. And if they don't react to it in a positive way, they also join the group of jogging on, I'm afraid. Because why would you surround yourself with people like that? It's not helpful. It's just not helpful.
So that is just, honestly, this is therapy for me for today. So moving on, and we've talked about the no rules, all of that. So you yourself, where you're at, obviously sort of teaching, SAA, tutorials, videos, and of course the BOOK, the book. Lots of big projects, do you know what I mean? Sort of, let my guys know, sort of, you know, where can they find you?
So,
I will put lots of links in,
Thank
obviously.
you very much. I've spent this year, so 2019, I have spent investing in myself, really, I suppose you'd put it. I haven't been seen around as much as I have done in previous years, but I'm hoping that all the investing that I've done this year will start to pay off. So you can find me on social media. I'm quite active on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. I do have verbal diarrhea, which I make no excuses for. I do waffle about all sorts of things, but I'm always willing to share and I'm always willing to chat to people. I do tutorials for the SAA. I'm very lucky to be supported by the SAA, who are a fantastic company. If you don't know about them, go and look them up because they're awesome. And I know that Lisa has started to work with them too, and we both agree that they're brilliant. No matter whether you've been painting kind of 10 minutes, 10 years, 10 decades, it really doesn't matter. There's something there for everybody. So I'm very lucky I get to do some of their live streaming. I get to do their video on demand. I get to write for Paint Magazine. I get to write blogs for them, and their video on demand platform on their community website. You can certainly find me there. I'm just in the process of producing my own video on demand, which is in its infancy at the moment, and we're just in the process of filming it, but that will be out hopefully towards the end of 2019, certainly the beginning of 2020. I also run workshops here at Down End Farm Studio, and you can come. And I also run painting holidays. We've got a painting retreat in 2020 at a place called Herd's Hill, which is just beautiful, and I can't wait to spend time there. I teach in Wales, and I teach in Guernsey, and I've taught in Europe as well. But the big news is that I have a book coming out in 2020, hopefully in February 2020, but certainly early in the year. And it's going to be called A Beginner's Guide to Watercolour with Mixed Media. And it's the with mixed media part of it that's the important part to me. It's going to be a book that guides you through some basic techniques with materials. It is very materials driven. It will encourage you to break all the rules. It will encourage you to go and experiment. It will go and encourage you that you can use bits of barbed wire in your painting if you really want to. And you can use leaves for stamping, and you can do collage, and you can do all sorts of stuff. So it's a book that hopefully will kind of encourage people in the long term rather than just working it through step by step and then we're done. And I'm also hoping that whilst you might do the tutorials in the book, but that it will also stand you in good stead for going and doing your own work. Because again, that's the thing that I really strive for people. When you've finished having a conversation with me, whether that's on social media or through the book or tutorial, that it doesn't end there, that you go, actually I could go and do this, and then I could do this, and what about if I use this with this? And the thing I always wish for everybody is that any bit of advice that I've given makes them sustainable as an artist, so that they can go away, feel confident in trying things out, in breaking all the rules, in putting things together that might not necessarily work. And I hope that the book comes across as being that. We're still editing it at the moment, which is a long process, but a very enjoyable one. And we'll see what happens when the book comes out next year.
That is fantastic. I know I'm going to be still putting my name down for one of the books through Search Press. Like, yeah, I like one of Alison's books. It does sound amazing. So, thank you very much. What we're going to do now is obviously we'll cut and we're going to do a tour of Ali's studio, which we're going to start from the outside. So the outside is just as cool as the inside. And you'll also see why I especially love it, because of the love of the purple accessories. Okay, so thank you very much, Alison, for talking to us today.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to start this video, not just going straight through the door, just to show you the setting that Alison's studio is in. And of course she's got her funky car. I've looked at getting my my car with paw prints over it before, and like my husband's sort of like, he's got to drive it as well, he's not quite sure. So this is, as Alison was saying before, about the studio being attached to the house, and then this was partly the garage. This is what her husband's converted for her. So when she was saying that earlier, I was thinking, well, he's definitely a keeper.
A little bit.
Yeah, my husband, no, his skills wouldn't run to that. So we're going to go through the studio door now, and you'll soon see what I mean as well about the purple accessories. That's a nice big tool chest there as well. Is that?
That's my latest acquisition, really.
Right.
My husband's got one for some of the things that he does.
I bet his is red, is it?
His is red.
Yeah, boring red. I didn't even know they came in purple.
Well, no, neither did I. And I was determined. This was my treat to myself this year, because we've just done a bit. Every summer we do an upgrade on the studio, and we kind of replace things. And I had like a nail technician's box that used to fall apart and all the rest of it, but I just love it so much because all the drawers put out, all this stuff.
They're fantastic.
So I can keep all my nonsense.
You know that I will be going home and Googling. Well, this is one of the things I'm going to be Googling when I go home.
Pretty sure you can get a pink one.
Julie, is this lamp for working?
So
for
that's
filming?
For filming, because it's LED. So where we've just started to get into, because we've got strip lights in here. I mean, one of the
which
things...
has got the flicker, that helps with no flicker.
And we have got a lot of light in the studio, although it's a bit overcast today.
Just do a quick
my husband did actually design it so that there's as much light as is humanly possible, but it does get dull in here, and when you're filming it doesn't look great. You
want that nice consistent light, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So purple accessories everywhere. So obviously this is where, when you're doing your teaching, you've got the video set up overhead.
Yeah, so we have
on the screen.
We're kind of aware that we like to include people who have accessibility problems, so the studio is wheelchair friendly. And it also means that you can be sitting in the room and I can be demonstrating at my desk. The video camera will be recording it, and then it plays out through the television. So you don't actually need to leave your seat while you're here.
When you create, when I say normally, when you're just being creative, you just use one of the other tables or wherever.
I tend to use this.
You still sit there, yeah?
Because that's kind of where all my kit is. But I do spread to the amount of room that I have. If I was in a very small room, then I would just use a small space. But I have to say, when I've been writing the book and creating, because I don't ever do one painting at a time, I do several paintings at a time, so there will literally be stuff everywhere over any given surface on the draining board and everywhere, because I have the attention span of a gnat and the patience of blancmange. So if something is drying, I need to be working on the next thing.
Several things on the go at once.
And then yes, in my spare time I bring in aircraft with my 2 Max screens. But it's just because I'm a massive movie fan, movies and theatre and all sorts of things, so I tend to, when I'm working on my own, I'll have something playing on one screen.
Okay.
And I listen to huge amounts of music, and I have bands that a band that I follow all around the country, so I'll have their music or their videos or whatever it is playing.
Fantastic. And a little throw to what you're talking about, the ballet there.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got your cards here, which I imagine is what you do events like you said about Dorset Art Week as well, so you've always got things ready, prints and things like that to go, as well as you've got people coming in that can buy it whilst you're doing a workshop.
I mean, we have open studio days, but I'm doing a Dorset County show this year, so we need lots of publicity materials for that. And when I go and do demonstrations for art societies and the like, somebody, will like to sort of take a record of something that I'm working on, or they'll want to see a copy of a painting that I've done, and a greetings card's a nice way to be able to release that.
Yeah, it is, and people can afford them as well, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And when we have open studios, people don't always want to, my washing line in the way, they don't always want to buy an original, which is fair enough. People can't always afford originals, but a greetings card or a print or something, it's
accessible.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter, does it? It's not important.
This is another little bit that I'm very excited about. So obviously Alison runs workshops and that here. This is just, we talk about our own supplies. This is a little shop for students as well.
Well, I call it that, but to be honest,
I think it's called an excuse.
Yeah, it's an excuse to go, ooh, let's have some of that.
Let's not just have one, let's have the whole display.
And I hate running out of things.
Yeah.
When I'm creating, I cannot bear it if I can't find something or use something. So we tend to keep the things that I use most often. I mean, I use Pearlex powders and Brusho powders and Daniel Smith watercolours and textures and all sorts of things. So we kind of have them here, and then I like to use the excuse that people can buy them, but I love
the watercolour grounds.
Everything. Oh, yeah.
They've allowed me to use watercolour pencil on canvas.
Oh, yes, of course.
I couldn't. Perfect. People kept asking. They wanted a contemporary look to the portraits. I can't put it on canvas. So this is just like heaven.
And you can see my OCD coming out, and everything has to be labelled.
So if you had to be limited to 3 items.
Oh no.
To create.
I had to create.
Also, what's the 3 things, 3 tools that you've got, even whether it's just a paper, your tablet, what 3 things that you think are most important that you wouldn't do without?
Decent watercolour paper.
Yeah.
I can't be without decent watercolour paper. As much as my work is experimental, I need to know how whatever it is that I'm putting on is going to react with the surface, or if I am being really experimental and I'm scraping away, or I'm adding, or I'm building, or I'm collaging, or whatever it is, that piece of paper has to be fantastically
You need to know it's going to do what you need it to do, yeah.
So Saunders Waterford paper is a paper that I have always used pretty much, and I know no matter what weight, surface, finish it is, I know it's not going to fall apart on me. So that's probably number 1. Number 2, I would say, is probably watercolour paints, because that is the root of everything for me. Even when I'm using Brusho or Pearlex or ink or whatever it is, everything I do is based around a watercolour technique. So I think sometimes when you talk about mixed media, people perceive that that's acrylics, and actually for me it's not. It's all based on watercolour techniques. So really decent quality watercolour paints, not because I'm a watercolour snob, which I am a little bit, but just because I like my watercolour paints to do things that are a little bit unpredictable. So I like Daniel Smith watercolour paints because they produce colours that nobody else does, because they don't over grind their pigments, so you get lovely granulation textures, all of that kind of stuff that adds to the painting rather than me having to interfere with it too much to make it happen. And then I think my 3rd bit of kit that I couldn't do without is probably my Mac, or maybe my iPhone, but certainly technology, because without technology I struggle to create, and that may sound really odd, but I need to chat to people, I need to talk to people, I need to go and see what people are doing, I need to research which watercolour granulates and which one doesn't. So and also because of course particularly with my iPhone, I can be anywhere and snap a picture of something, and it can be a rusty old block or a horse's eye or anything, and I can just go blip. And technology has a very bad rap, I think, because people kind of treat it as the scourge of the earth, and I love it. I love that what it gives you, what it gets you. People think it's cheating, and it's really not. I mean, I don't understand why we still have this kind of 18th century regard to how art should be created. And I spend my life trying to dispel the hierarchy of materials. And there shouldn't be a hierarchy of materials, really. There is still one, unfortunately. But if you decide that a camera is the way forward for you, then use that. That's fine. And it doesn't have to be a traditional brush or a tube of watercolour or a piece of paper or whatever it is. It can be anything. If you going out with a bit of tissue paper and a bit of charcoal and doing rubbings on the bark of the tree is the thing that makes you happy, then that's what you're going to do. For me, I really love technology, and I like a gadget, and I like accessibility, and I like the internet, and I like all those things. So I think probably my bit of tech.
It's another tool.
It's another tool. Yeah, yeah.
Simple as that.
Absolutely. Very, very much so. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us in your studio today. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's inspired me. I know it's going to inspire many, and I'm sure you're going to have tons of people now going, wow, love you. And like, yeah, it's a whole new community, sort of like, hopefully, do you know what I mean, going to come on board.
I hope so.
Come on board.
See what you did there.
So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.